I think we'll get started here, and I'm sure we'll have a few more people joining on as we get going. My name is Steve Kalina. I'm the President and CEO of the Minnesota Precision Manufacturing Association, or MPMA. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. We've got a fantastic group of people on here. I looked through our attendee list, and it's all manufacturers. It looks like we went a little deeper into the teams at those manufacturers as well, so I think a lot of people are interested in this topic. Just some quick housekeeping. I know Lacey mentioned we actually switched from the regular webinar format through Zoom and went to the more interactive meeting format. So that just allows you guys to obviously have your videos on and allow us to do a little bit more interactive Q&A as we go too. So please do mute yourself throughout. And if you do have questions, please put them in the chat function. And then basically we'll ask you if you want to ask them live or we can ask them for you. And if they are timely, Alessia, the presenter, is happy to answer questions as she goes. So we'll kind of discern whether they're an immediate question or something that we save for the end for Q&A. So just some quick updates. March 25th, we've got a program on real estate resources to expand your business with Larson Builders and DSMB CPAs and business advisors. And then on April 8th, BusyWeb has a program on how to attract and engage prospects, so primarily on the marketing side of things. March 23rd, we are kicking off our second cohort of our skill training academy at Hennepin Tech. Really exciting. It's just been fantastic so far. Just amazing students, and the companies are doing a great job. So challenges with COVID and just obviously always have workforce challenges, but the companies and the students are doing a great job. So excited to kick that off. And we're just in a lot of legislative activity right now. I mean, this year, a lot of the focus is on racial disparities and then, of course, COVID relief. So that's what a lot of the conversation at the Capitol has been covering. But right now, we're also working extensively with the Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Health, on the vaccine rollout. So potentially later this, it's Thursday, so potentially tomorrow, but otherwise early next week. Watch for information from us. We're going to be getting out information that's specifically for manufacturers in the vaccine rollout. So it'll give some specific to-dos and information and certain things, options that you may have as a manufacturer to do even on-site testing. Just really ways to make sure that your employees are getting kind of to the front of the line. So watch for that information. And if you're not a member of MPMA, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to get that information to you. We'll be sharing it with a lot of the other trade associations as well. So look for that shortly. Most of the time over the years when we've sat and talked about workforce development, usually we sit in the room with educators and state officials. And as a manufacturer myself, I can tell you I got tired of a lot of those meetings because I felt like we kind of talked about the same rhetoric. And now it's been 10, 15 years of struggling through this workforce development issues. And a lot of the people on this call have struggled through a lot of those challenges. But I can tell you, I sat in, so I'm on the governor's workforce development board. It's run through DEED. And last spring, right before COVID, Alessia came and presented to us. And we probably had 70 or 80 people in the room that were educators, state officials, other industries. And I teased Alessia afterwards that I felt like she and I were the only two in the room because the presentation was for us, for our association, for manufacturers, for machinists. It's like DEED just sent Alessia off to do this specifically for us. So it was pretty cool to hear that presentation. And right then and there, I said, all right, we got to get you in front of our membership. Well, COVID happened a couple weeks later, and now here we are, getting back to it. So really excited to cover that. And I think you'll get some great takeaways today. It's obviously isn't going to be a surprise, the challenges that she'll mention, but it's kind of a new take on it. But first I'm going to introduce Amy Cruz, who I've known for many years, and she's with Vision One High Performance Group, who's a very strong strategic partner and annual sponsor of MPMA, a great partner on the workforce development front. So I'm going to hand it over to Amy to kind of kick off the topic and hand it over to Alessia. So Amy.
Got to unmute myself there. Good morning. I'm glad to be here today to represent Vision One High Performance as a partner for today's session. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Vision One High Performance, we are a consulting company with experience working with many different types of organizations and a high concentration in manufacturing. We have partnered with MPMA and Minnesota DEED to secure training grants to help fill in the talent gap that exists today. We have an online training academy platform with a focus on workforce development, where we help employees build their skills while on the job. And we provide other high-level solutions to help companies get to the next level of growth, to include buying and selling, to other business consultative services, to include HR services, of which I get to be a part of. So if you want to learn more, you can learn more at vision1performance.com. Today's topic on overcoming hiring difficulties in manufacturing is critical, as finding good talent is likely one of the biggest hurdles that you are facing today. In my experience over the last 25 years in human resources and business, we went from having a nice selection of candidates, we'd have a nice little pile of resumes 10 years ago, to maybe one or two qualified candidates, and it takes months to find a somewhat qualified candidate. And while working in industry, my personal challenge was finding qualified tool makers and CNC machinists. And I often found candidates who had some experience and maybe as an operator, but certainly not somebody who knew to do a setup on a CNC machine. There's the recruiters, now that I bring this up, you're going to hear this later in as you're reading. Recruiters and HR have coined the phrase purple squirrels for finding talent, because it's almost impossible to find qualified people with the many skills that companies now require. And of course, we're in a space right now where we have an aging workforce and just a high number of people that are retiring. Our presentation today about overcoming hiring difficulties in manufacturing is an important topic, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce Alessia Leibert as your presenter today. Alessia is a project manager with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, which is DEED, right? She has led the Minnesota Hiring Difficulties Surveys, also known as the Skills Gap Surveys, since 2012. And she has developed a very popular online tool called Occupations in Demand. Alessia has her master's degree in public policy from the Humphrey Institute at the University of Minnesota. So Alessia, I'll hand the presentation over to you.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
So again, thank you for having me. I'm very excited because I'm really passionate about this topic, and I'm really looking forward to the question and answer session at the end. I have a lot to share, so this presentation gonna be fairly fast-paced, but you can interrupt me with questions at any time. So what I'm going to share with you today is the findings from the 2019 Minnesota Hiring Difficulty Survey. And the main finding of the survey is that 34%, that 1 out of 3 hard-to-fill vacancies were attributed to skills gaps. I'm going to talk about the factors driving hiring difficulties, the skills identified by employers as hardest to find, the best practices to address these skills-related hiring difficulties, the potential causes of misalignment between post-secondary training programs and skills, and possible solutions for this misalignment, and then the role of high schools in preparing students for careers in manufacturing. I'm not able to move to the next slide. Okay. So a skills gap is become particularly problematic during the hiring process. So we measure them through our well-established job vacancy survey. You're probably familiar with the DEED's job vacancy survey. And that allows us to conduct follow-up interviews with employers who posted vacancies in manufacturing throughout 2018. So if a vacancy was posted over the course of 2018, we would then contact employers in 2019 to see how to ask them about their experience. And we had a response rate of 67%, representing 146 employers. As you can see from this chart, overall employers reported hiring difficulties in 62% of vacancies, but there was a huge variation in the incidence of hiring difficulties, going from 96% hard to fill positions in CNC machine tool programmers to only 17% hard to fill for electrical, electromechanical, engineering technologies, and drafters. So there is clearly something going on in the top 2 occupations on this list, something about these occupations that makes them harder to recruit for. And so the question is why these occupations are so hard to fill. The reason number one is that they are really feeling the impact of technological change. These occupations are undergoing a huge transformation. They are becoming more skilled, more specialized. They're becoming true STEM jobs, knowledge economy jobs, and workforce skills haven't kept up. And the types of skills that are hardest to find are not easily taught in the classroom in a standardized curriculum. Reason number two is the long and uncertain training path towards competencies in these occupations. It takes years of on-the-job training, and in a tight labor market, it's really hard to hire for skills that can be built through years on the job, much harder than hiring for skills that can be built in the classroom. Reason number three is the lack of industry-recognized skill certifications. In machining, we only have the National Institute for Metalworking Skills credentialing program, and we heard from employers that this program is lacking because it only measures foundational knowledge, and also it has some obsolete exam questions. And this is really very different from what's happening in welding. In welding, we have a lot of certifications. At each step has a specific certification. So job seekers and workers can see a path towards competency, and their skills are also very portable. And unfortunately, in machining, we don't have that. We don't have that clear path and portable skills. And reason number four is the shrinking pipeline of trainable people, a little bit of what Amy already mentioned. The talent pool used to come from high school vocational ed or people with prior experience as machine operators, but both of these pipelines have dried out. And so this leaves us only with people who are already employed as machinists. And so you're left with trying to steal workers from your competitor. And the other problem is that there is a very high turnover in the machine operator jobs, and that leaves a lot of employers nobody to train, nobody to promote from within. When we look at hiring difficulties by industry, we see also a huge variation. We see 82% hiring difficulties in primary and fabricated metal products manufacturing, and only 20% hiring difficulties in medical instruments manufacturing. This chart also shows an indicator for whether the industry is STEM related or non-STEM related. And that's an indicator for the technological intensity of the industry. And then there seems to be a correlation between this technological intensity of an industry and the vulnerability to hiring difficulties. And employers told us that, especially employers in low-tech manufacturing told us that they're facing competition from high-tech manufacturers because in a tight labor market, the image of the product, the coolness of a product is a factor determining the choice of where to work, the choice of where to send a resume. And some industry sectors are being more successful than others at projecting an image of being high tech. And sometimes it's just perception sometimes, because a lot of these jobs are high tech and many people don't realize it. They just go by the coolness of the product. So the image problem is something that needs to be addressed. We also see a lot of differences in hiring difficulties by region. We see very high concentration of hiring difficulties in central Minnesota, 94%. That is a lot. And mostly driven by competition from the Twin Cities labor market, where wages are higher. And the second most impacted region is North Minnesota, the yellow bar, 63% hard to fill positions. And the reasons are mainly two. First, it's the remote location of some North Minnesota places, and it's very far from the amenities of the city. It's hard to draw good candidates to these locations. And number two is the lack of training programs in some Northwest regions. And I'm gonna talk about that later in the presentation. So once we identify the vacancy as being hard to fill, we asked employers a series of questions aimed at identifying whether the hiring difficulty was more caused by demand factors or supply factors. This distinction matters because it has different policy implications. Demand factors are more likely to be within the control of employers. For example, employers might do something to make hours of work more flexible, or improve the benefits package. Whereas the supply factors are more likely to be the responsibility of the education system. What we found in our survey is that demand reasons outweigh supply reasons, 56 to 44%. And also we found that within supply reasons, the hardest to find skills are those developed through on-the-job training. 19% of hiring difficulties were due to lack of applicants with the right experience or skills acquired through on-the-job training. So by respondents' own admission, the business community is truly in the best position to build the skills that are hardest to find. We also find that in 60% of cases of hiring difficulties, demand reasons were mentioned together with supply reasons. That tells you that even if we could entirely, with a magic wand, remove all skills gaps, we might still be facing hiring difficulties. So the problem cannot be just simply solved by fixing the skills gap side. We also need to address some of the reasons why some of the undesirable characteristics of these jobs that discourages some applicants from applying. And hiring difficulties are a problem economy-wide, especially in tight labor markets. But there is something about manufacturing. There is something unique about manufacturing in that the share of hiring difficulties attributable to skills gaps is higher compared to other sectors of the economy. This is what we found in 4 rounds of skills gap surveys, when we also surveyed other sectors, and we didn't find anything like in manufacturing, the predominance of skills gap as the main problem. So, and there are a few reasons. Number one is that the types of skills are really difficult to build. You don't just go to school for it. And so the good news about it is that, so you need to train these skills on the job. And the good news about it is that you can train people very effectively on the job for those skills, as long as candidates have some foundational knowledge in math and mechanical skills. And that's really very traditional. Very traditional foundational skills is in many cases, it's all you need to train people effectively, so that it's not gonna take you years to train them. And we know how to teach these foundational skills. The bad news is that problem-solving skills are becoming much more critical, and they're not easy to teach. You need a project-based approach. You need some equipment. You need some resources to simulate the work environment. And manufacturing employees are truly some of the most innovative thinkers in the whole economy because they are problem solvers. But how do you teach those skills? That's the million-dollar question. And new generations, unfortunately, lack exposure to opportunities to develop mechanical and problem-solving skills. And high school kids are at the time in their lives when career aspirations are formed. They're not being shown what they can do if they were to nurture their mechanical skills. If you think about it, we're so good at identifying athletic skills from an early age in our children, right? We identify them early. We make so much investment in their athletic skills, and we don't identify mechanical skills, which are actually, in my opinion, even more valuable in the future economy. And speaking from experience, I know it's really easy to tell who has mechanical skills and who doesn't. I have two sons. One has it, the other one doesn't. And when I saw that my son had those skills, I was really determined to find a way for him to cultivate it, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And he was gonna lose it because he's playing video games like everyone else. These kids are not tinkering in the garage or fixing things as a hobby like their grandparents used to do. So if you don't look for these opportunities, you're gonna lose the skills. And fortunately, I was able to find a robotics program in 7th grade for my son, and he started it and he loved it, and now he is in his 4th year of robotics. And I'm gonna talk about this later on, but this is just to tell you that there is a lot more that should be done to promote those skills early from middle school and high school, so that kids can invest in them. Because if you don't recognize those skills, if you don't value them, you're not gonna develop an interest for the careers that utilize those skills. And then you end up in a situation like we found in the survey, that 68% of hard-to-fill positions attracted very few candidates, 10 or fewer applications. This is the problem that Amy was talking about. And so you have this drying pipeline from high school. Then you have the retirements that further prevent you from training the next generation of workers. And it's a really hard to fix problem. So the next two slides are full of quotes from employers that describe which skills are hardest to find. I am not going to go through the whole list because it's really that they're easy to read on your own. I'm just going to read two quotes. The younger generation is not as mechanically inclined, so they require extra training when they're hired. It would help if candidates had a hobby with cars and fixing things. And then my favorite quote is, it's a lot of math and problem solving. Our products are not standardized. And in Minnesota, we really have a big custom manufacturing sector where products are not standardized. That's the competitive advantage here in Minnesota. But that means that you have different issues that emerge every day that require problem solving. And it's hard to find somebody that has the tenacity to work through it. This tenacity, it's exactly what you learn by problem solving, by trial and error. And that's really something that our kids are not used to. And I'm gonna skip to this slide that shows the quotes that we collected from respondents in the survey that we conducted in 2012. And it's very striking to see the similarity between what they were saying in 2012 and what they told us in 2019. Applicants had training, but no practical experience on our machines. We keep hearing that. There is no feeder mechanism for the colleges anymore. Colleges are just responding to demand from high school, and with no demand for machining or programming or setups, there is no incentive for the colleges to offer those classes. And it's not just a matter of gaps in post-secondary training, but lack of interest for manufacturing. And then firms steal people from other firms competing on wages. So it's like nothing has changed in these 8 years. The one thing that has changed is that employers are truly shifting towards investing in on-the-job training. We saw that clearly in this survey, because we're asking employers, if those that had hiring difficulties, what actions did you take to overcome hiring difficulties? And we're seeing that investments in on-the-job training and retention are really ramping up. They're trending up compared to 2012. The most popular response always when we do these surveys is change advertising or recruiting method. It's like it's about 69% of respondents say that. And it's because this strategy is low cost and it's very rapid. You immediately see some differences if you change recruiting method. But the most interesting responses are the ones that come next, that I have circled in red, and that's because they represent investments in retention, and they are making the job more attractive to reduce turnover without increasing the wage, increasing the wage or benefits package, increase training to new hires. And then further down the list, we see 39% partnered with high schools or colleges to recruit students, outsource training or design curriculum. 24% lowered the minimum requirements of the position. 23% offered an internship, and only 9% did nothing in response to hiring difficulties. So this shows you how employers are taking this very seriously, and they are taking action in overwhelming numbers. And when we also asked employers, of all of those strategies that you implemented, which were the most effective? And so the best practice number one is to invest in measures to reduce turnover and train new hires. So we saw there is a strong connection between turnover and hiring difficulties, and between training and hiring difficulties. Positions that had high turnover were twice more likely to be hard to fill than positions that didn't have turnover. And firms that offer structured on-the-job training or apprenticeships were less likely to experience hiring difficulties. So fundamentally, if you don't train, if you train, you're more likely to be able to retain, and you're less likely to experience hiring difficulties because you can promote from within. The best practice number two is to use a combination of internal and external training. When we asked employers what type of training you offer to new hires or incumbent workers, we saw that 69% offered structured on-the-job training, 65% short-term off-the-job training, like 4 days training to become forklift certified or welding certifications and so on. 44% offered tuition reimbursement for post-secondary school. And then what's even more interesting, since these questions were all that apply, we found that 44% of employers actually use a combination of structured on-the-job training and classroom training. And employers told us that this was really key to them. They enabled them to attract young talent, because who is not interested in having their post-secondary education paid for? And some employers are offering amazing deals to these students. in terms of tuition reimbursement and paying for books. There are really amazing deals out there. And then employers told us that it also helped them lower turnover, because typically people are more encouraged to stay with the company if they see that the company is investing in them. Typically, not always the case, but typically. And the best practice number 2 is really more directed at small firms. The problem is, how do you overcome the barriers that small firms are facing when they try to offer on the job training? Small firms are at a disadvantage because they have fewer resources to offer on the job training and tuition reimbursement, let alone higher wages. They have less organizational capacity to identify training gaps as they emerge and find trainers. But the good news is that the small firms that we surveyed, and those that were able to deliver on the job training in some form, they were successful at preventing hiring difficulties. And that was true across industries and across regions. So we truly believe that that's really an important strategy. And we heard from employers that there are 2 state-sponsored initiatives that are really meeting the needs of employers. The first one is the Minnesota Apprenticeship Initiative that covers some of the costs associated with developing apprenticeship programs. This is probably not the best initiative for small firms because small firms are unlikely to offer apprenticeship. So probably for a small firm, the best program is the Pipeline Training Program, funded by the Department of Labor and Industry. This one, I'm really impressed with this one because it's very comprehensive. It really starts from the very beginning. The very first stage when you want to do on-the-job training is identifying skills needs. That is sometimes not easy when the technological transformations are so rapid. You never have the time to stop and think about what are the new skills that my people will need. And this program really allows you to assess your needs and helps you once you have assessed the needs, set up the training, and then identify a partner college of your choice that can help you with classroom training while you're also delivering work-based training. So it's very employer-centered, and it's based on this combination of in-house training and classroom training that has been identified as very successful. Other examples of best practices are here reported on this slide. Number 1 is to improve retention through flexible schedules. We heard that flexibility of schedules is really, really a big problem in manufacturing. Shifts that are inconvenient, sometimes having to start at lacking flexibility in hours can really discourage somebody from applying for these jobs. Giving internships to high school students, offering tuition reimbursement for new hires, and then with the promise that they are going to work with you after they finish the program. And expand collaborations with colleges around curriculum development. Improve the quality of internal training, training the trainers, investing in equipment to simulate the real work environment. So we heard some employers have invested in welding labs and machining labs. And then some employers are also expanding recruiting efforts to immigrants and underrepresented minorities. My next topic is trying to figure out in what ways post-secondary education can help fix the problem of skills gaps. There are really cases of misalignment between post-secondary programs and employer skills needs. Some programs do not exist in certain regions of the state where employers need them the most. And it's quite remarkable that this is happening because, for example, CNC machine tool programmers in Northwest Minnesota are a 5-star occupation in the occupations in demand tool. They have five stars. They have amazing wages, especially considering that these are not jobs requiring a 4-year degree. And they have an incredible growth rate. So they're projected to grow 19% in Northwest Minnesota and 21% in Northeast Minnesota. So these are amazing opportunities for the future. And yet there is no program in this occupation in Northwest Minnesota because the region is not listed in this list. And even in other regions, I think there is only 11 programs statewide. So something is not right here. Probably the schools are going to say, well, we have no interest. So no students, meaning that we're not offering the program. And this is exactly part of the problem here, that post-secondary schools are sometimes reactive, they're not proactive, and they respond more to, they don't respond as much to market signals, but they respond to student interest. So something must be done on the side of student interest if we want these programs to be offered. Another, and even if these programs were offered, sometimes employers are dissatisfied with what these programs are teaching. We heard employers that said that the program really doesn't teach problem-solving skills. And when these candidates are confronted with different machines, they really don't know how to, they don't have the flexibility to work on different machines. Another really, really big problem is that the programs are not interdisciplinary enough. These new technologies are increasingly integrated, as you know. Now it's mechatronic. It's not just simply mechanical or electrical separated. They're all merged. And automated systems are all integrated. Also, the distinction between programming and tooling and manual machining is disappearing. So this is what's going to happen. This is happening in the reality of the workplace, but post-secondary programs are still functioning in silos. That's something that needs to change. Also, very important point is that some employers are uncertain about how best to develop the skills they need. Again, because since the skills are changing so rapidly, it's difficult for employers to take the time and assess the situation, see, wait a minute, what do I need? And I've seen countless job postings that tell me that something is really, something's going on, that employers are not really sure if they need a machinist or a CNC machinist or even the job posting sometimes is very ambiguous. And then it's the other difficult thing is once I identify the skills I need, are they best developed through post-secondary training or short-term on-the-job training? How long? Apprenticeship, not apprenticeship? This uncertainty is very difficult. And we've heard from one employer that really struck me, an employer who experimented for 3 years with an apprenticeship program to form the skills for a machining. And then at the end of the 3 years, after having invested time and money, they realized that the people that they recruited from the local community college in machining were better prepared than those that went through their apprenticeship program. So it's like, imagine a company doesn't have those resources to experiment for years. What are they going to do? And this uncertainty, so each employer is left alone to determine what a machining needs to do in my company. And then this uncertainty makes it hard to go to the local school and say, these are exactly my needs, can you please help? And we are now at our last two slides, and this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because I've been a mentor in my son's robotics team for 3 years, and I've seen there is great potential in high schools to bring this to make these students interested in careers in manufacturing. One of the best initiatives that I've seen is the robotics programs. They start from middle school, and they really expose kids to problem solving. These and all the technologies that are needed in manufacturing. They learn Java coding, building, use of tools, engineering design, electricity and physics. You need to know statics because otherwise your robot is not gonna start at the beginning of the tournament. And 3D printing and problem solving in all of these things. And I've seen children that were started the program at age 15 and it was already too late for them. They did not have the tenacity to work through these problems, like the trial and error. The kids are really very, 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 very frustrated when they are confronted with trial and error. So these are initiatives that, in my opinion, should start in middle school. And there is a lot of potential. These initiatives are attracting a diverse population of students. I've seen all female robotics teams. I've seen Somali girls with their, in the hijabs and long skirts driving the robots. So it's quite a sight. It's quite promising. And also, a lot could be done improving career and technical education programs and making them more employer-oriented, more employer-driven. I would like to see less useless courses in baking and photography, and see more courses that teach mechanical and STEM problem solving. And this is something that the high schools really cannot do alone because they are struggling to recruit teachers with the STEM qualifications. There is a huge shortage of STEM teachers in Minnesota, in Minnesota. And so it would be great I think what we would need is partnerships between local employers and high schools to send them some trainers, to share some equipment, to allow them to deliver to give these opportunities so that kids can become familiar with problem solving and get excited about these jobs are extremely, in my opinion, extremely exciting. These are the technologies of the future. And maybe I also think that some career counselors and parents are afraid to guide students to these opportunities because they're afraid of tracking them away from college into some kind of manual labor, which is really an obsolete image of manufacturing. I think these programs and also career and technical education, they're valuable both for college-bound students and for non-college-bound students, because even engineers, the new engineering requires an understanding of mechanical aspects. And we heard employers that say, hey, these engineering candidates don't even know how to hold a tool. It's a problem. So it's a problem also for the college-bound students. These skills are not just needed in manufacturing, in blue-collar jobs, but really across the economy. And my last slide, I don't know how I'm doing time-wise. So my last slide is just wraps up what we already talked about. So it really takes a coordinated intervention at all of these three levels: high schools and employers and post-secondary schools. At the high school level, we need to ensure that career and technical education and also core curriculum in math and science gives the foundational skills that will allow employers to train these people on the job more effectively. And then ensure that students and parents are aware of these opportunities, that they make investments not only in athletic skills for their children, but also in mechanical and problem-solving skills that are just as important. Employers could invest in internal training and partner with schools to identify key competencies, decide whose role it is to teach what, and collaborate with post-secondary schools and high schools to help them teach the skills that are most critical. And then post-secondary institutions should definitely be more market-driven, and not just driven by student interest, but guiding students towards the opportunities that are out there in terms of labor market. They should be looking at labor market data when expanding a program, when deciding where to open a program. And especially Greater Minnesota, where we found some training gaps, and engaging local employers in curriculum design. And finally, make these programs more multidisciplinary, break those silos, and tailoring the program to the needs of local employers. These are the publications. So all our research findings have been documented in a few articles. And if you're interested in reading, finding out more, these are the links that you can use.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate that, Alessia. I think I told everyone that it seems like this whole study and presentation was made just for us, and I think that was abundantly clear. I feel like I don't know that I've ever met a representative of the state that could speak as clearly, eloquently, and as passionately about our industry and our needs and challenges. So, yeah, I hope everyone was taking notes, because I just want to quick recap a few things, because I think there was just so many things to share. And this presentation will be it is recorded, and we'll have it available. I'm going to just share my recap notes, and I'm just going to kind of quick run through, because I think there were things big takeaways I had. But probably the number one thing I heard you say, Alessia, was something is not right here. It was kind of a good recap of everything. But I'll just rattle through a few of the notes that I took, and then I'll get to some questions. But tech schools are responding to student interest, not market demand. Machining is becoming a STEM job, and people don't realize that it's high tech. NIMS has been deemed inadequate, while the welding industry has done a lot with skills development. Demand issues outweigh supply issues, which means that we have more control over the solutions than maybe we thought otherwise. Problem-solving skills are more critical than ever for our industry. Yet it's the toughest thing to train on and not covered in school. Clearly, more OJT is needed, and it's helping. It reduces the likelihood of hiring difficulties. The number one solution, or one of the top solutions, was to make jobs more attractive versus just increasing wages. An internal and external training combination is most successful. And I wrote high schools, but I switched it to middle schools need more engaging manufacturing programs that are cross-functional, such as robotics, and we need partnership from industry. So those were the notes I feverishly was taking as you were presenting. So I had nothing prepared like that, but you just covered a lot of great content, so I appreciate that. So again, if you have questions, feel free to post in the chat function. We'll rattle them off. And so the question was, when you engage high schools promoting our industry, what is their reception? And Dale had put my name in there, so I don't know if he was kind of asking me that, but I guess I'll ask if you've got a take on that, Alessia, as well. Are schools looking to engage with industry? Are they receptive to that, or are we going to have much luck pushing them?
it's hard to answer the question. I know that the robotics programs are all trying to get sponsorships from firms, and they're being very successful at obtaining sponsorships. So the robotics community is really actively engaged. Some schools have less resources for robotics programs because they don't give the space. Robotics requires space to set up the pit and the field, and to store all of this equipment. And then some schools have a fab lab. Others, like some schools have fantastic. Some schools have a mill, and the 3D printers, fantastic things. And some schools don't. So there's really different level of resources. And then some schools have more parental involvement in these initiatives, because parents do a lot in the robotics programs. It's a lot of parents being mentors, parents helping these kids work through these tough problems. And so maybe some schools also, it's not that the school is not interested, it's that it takes a lot of not every school has the parents' involvement and the space and the support from the school district. That is what I've seen. In terms of the career and technical courses, I think there is a problem with career counselors, frankly. The career counselors are almost trying to discourage kids from taking the post-secondary enrollment options. Then some of them have like welding or auto repair. They're being a little bit, they're not really promoting those courses. I'm really not sure why. And that's all I can say, because I do not have much insight into. I know that some school districts are really very invested in career and technical education, much more than others.
And I agree. To answer from my perspective, Dale, there's definitely some districts where I see from the top, the superintendent through principals are passionately engaged and supportive and looking to engage with industry. And I think one of the most important things is, do the schools have a passionate instructor that's willing to fight? And Alessia commented on that. It's harder and harder to find those instructors. So I've seen districts that are very actively engaged. I mean, if you guys read my my letter in our latest magazine, I highlighted a couple, like Shakopee High School, that's just done a fantastic job with their career pathways. And I mean, it's just a really impressive school. And St. Francis High School has got their student-run business that is actually manufacturing production products. And then St. Paul, or Johnson High School in St. Paul, that went from a drug-ridden, violent inner city school to now sponsored engineering and aerospace focused school. That's just really impressive. So but then you see other districts where they're getting very little support from administration and programs are just kind of dying off. So it's hit or miss, but definitely the ones that have engagement from industry are getting, are doing better. I mean, you look at the support that of the high schools I just listed, plus Hutchinson High School, New Ulm High School. I mean, you go down the list of successful high schools, they've got White Bear Lake High School, they've got industry partnerships, and they'll have banners on their wall listing the 10 companies that have partnered with them or more. I think that's a big part of that success. Another question, Alessia, you mentioned on the welding side, what have you seen that they've done? I mean, they've created those programs, and obviously, our industry has tried to create programs too. What do you think is their formula for success? Why has the welding industry done pretty well with skills development?
I think it's more standardized across employers. Whereas machining, I keep hearing from employers that the machinist skills depend on the type of machine. And that really makes it much harder to create these certifications around some standards. That's my understanding. Whereas for welding, it's more related to the material that you weld with, and it's more standardized across employers. Still, I think I think it would be worth trying to see what's in common, to try to find something standardized. There must be something in common, despite all of these differences between the type of machine and the other type of machine. It's probably worth pursuing some other some additional certification in machining. Because right now, only the foundational, really basic knowledge is certified, and there's nothing beyond that. And I think it makes it a hard sell for a high school student who would like to pursue a career in manufacturing. Try to tell that student that, hey, in 10 years, you might become a fully competent machinist. And there's nothing in between. So if after 5 years you somehow want to quit that company, where are you going? What do you have in your hands? How can you prove your skills? You see, so it's a really long and uncertain path that relies on your employer's willingness to groom you. You see, so I think it's making it harder for these careers to be attractive. It makes it harder to attract new people to these careers. Not having this nicely laid out certification steps that fundamentally lays out a career path. What you need to do next to climb the ladder.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I think our company, when we had success with apprentices, we've laid out that not say a timeline, but kind of a path to show them what we're going to do with them, what their path can look like. It's still a lot on them, but at least show them that we have that path laid out and the options and opportunities. So I know we're down just a minute here. If anyone else has any last questions, you can plug them in, but otherwise we'll start wrapping up. And this has been an awesome presentation, and again, it's just a lot of pertinent data related to our industry, and appreciate the passion that you bring with it, Alessia. One last comment I'll make is that one new thing MPMA is going to start doing is basically we're going to make it free for any student or educator attendees at any of our programs, which obviously not all of our programs are applicable to students, but of course, we do tours, which will start getting back to in person here probably come June. But we encourage all of you, any of you, to bring a teacher, bring a parent, bring a student along with to programs at MPMA. We'll make it free for them and no strings attached, just to get them into a shop or get them to hear a little bit more about the industry. So encourage you to just reach out and do it organically, grassroots, just find one student to bring in if you can. So. All right, any final parting thoughts, Alessia? Otherwise, thanks for your time.
No, I'm just thank you for this opportunity. It's really nice to bring our research out to the field.
That was great. Well, I appreciate everyone joining us today. I look forward to seeing you at our next programs, and hopefully in person again soon. And otherwise, take care, stay healthy, and stay busy.
Bye.